Child, tuck yourself in bed. Let me tell a story of Lemuria, a kingdom past, and a girl born for glory.
Hello everybody, welcome to GamesRadar's video review of Child of Light. I'm Ryan Teljanik and I've finished the game.
And I'm Sophia Tong and I've played half of the game.
All right.
So, what is Child of Light?
Well, it's kind of this interesting cross between like a puzzle platformer and an RPG. The combat style specifically is, the developers have mentioned several times that it's inspired by games like Final Fantasy, and that very much shows through. But it's also like basically a video game fairy tale, which is really, really interesting because the aesthetic of the entire thing, the art style, the characters, the fact that the game is written entirely in rhyme, all of that stuff really kind of comes together to make this sort of like really magical but still very surprisingly heavy kind of game, and it's really, really, really fun to play.
Yeah, did you like the story and how it was laid out and kind of how it flowed?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting because the beginning setup is like surprisingly dark. So that kind of caught me off guard, and I really did like, the whole rhyme thing, I think worked really well to convey that it is supposed to be this kind of fairy tale sort of thing. I think sometimes the writing was a little hard to follow just because it was written, in the way it was presented. It was occasionally concessions had to be made just to make the rhymes fit, but I really, really enjoyed how that was all laid out. I think some of the story stuff is a little bit difficult to follow unless you're paying like super close attention, but I actually really, really liked it a lot. You're playing as Aurora, a little girl who's kind of ripped from the real world and shoved into this magical kingdom called Lemuria. And she's kind of just trying to figure out what to do there. She wants to get back to her father in the real world, doesn't know how to do it, and along the way she's kind of told that she has to save this kingdom from darkness, and she's the only one that can bring back the light into the kingdom, thus the Child of Light. And she meets all kinds of interesting characters along the way.
But one of the characters that I really like is the fairy called
Igniculus?
I think is his name. Its name. And the game's actually co-op. I don't know if you had a chance to play the co-op.
Yeah, actually the co-op works pretty well because Igniculus, you control him. I guess the only comparison I have is like in Rayman Legends when Murphy would show up and you could control him with the right thumbstick. You do control him separately from Aurora, and it was really, really neat because he plays a very vital role. Not only does he act as a light source and can illuminate certain dark areas, but he also can affect the way enemies react to you. So he can like temporarily blind them so that you can get a jump on them for a surprise attack instead of getting ambushed. And then also in combat, he plays a really crucial role where, it's kind of difficult to explain, but there's an action bar that goes along the bottom of the screen, and there's a certain threshold at which once you select an action, there's a cast time for everything you do, and if you're hit during that time, you're interrupted and set back further back on the action bar. But with Igniculus, you can actually hover him over an enemy, press a button, and slow their advancement across the action bar. So it's like battles become this really interesting strategic flow of like trying to figure out when is the best time to slow certain enemies, when is the best time to let their actions go through so you don't get interrupted. And it's got this really neat back and forth flow that was really surprisingly engaging. And the way the co-op works is somebody gets to control Igniculus himself. So it is really active and very fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably easier to have someone do it because I was struggling sometimes and like balancing, like you have two characters to control and you're facing three. So it's like a weird mix between it's turn-based, but it's also active.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's also this really neat crafting component too, so you can enhance your attacks. There's like these little crystals, I think they're called oculi, and you can kind of combine all these different ones to make new combinations that have elemental attack damage or elemental defense, that sort of thing. And there's also a really, really good sense of progression in the game because you're leveling up like
every single time.
Yeah, almost every fight or every other fight, and there's some really in-depth skill trees for every character that you have in your party. And so it's always really fun to be like, yes, I just leveled up. Now I can unlock a new ability. And a lot of those are really, really useful. Of course, some are just passive upgrades like strength or magic attack, but you also get some really neat abilities for all the characters, and they all do feel very different in their skill sets.
Did you find the game hard at all?
The first half I actually thought was way easy, and I was playing through on normal, and I was thinking to myself, man, I probably should have just played through on hard. But actually, about halfway through the game, there's a sudden like spike in difficulty. Not an overbearing one. It's still not terribly difficult, but it does become actually challenging about the halfway point. And I found, because like I was stockpiling consumables that you find throughout the world and never having to use them. I think you mentioned the same. You just have dozens of potions in your inventory, but by the end I'd gone through almost all of them. So I was really surprised to see that kind of jump there.
And this is something we talked about, and like what we appreciate about games is like the art style and the music. So how did you feel that whole package? How did it all come together?
Oh man, so for me it was this really cool moment where I just loaded up the title screen, getting ready to play. And I just sat there and looked at it and listened to the theme song loop. And it's like this really, really like just amazing experience, really, the way the art and the music comes together, especially the music. It's incredible because, you're playing out this fairy tale kind of story, and yet the music is done in such a way where it makes every action you take feel like it has such importance behind it. It's like these sweeping orchestral scores that are very, very beautiful to listen to. And the art style, too, is like this hand-drawn kind of watercolor looking thing. And it's really nuts how much it looks like you're actually just playing what you might see in like a storybook or something.
Yeah, I've been having such a great time playing this game. So roughly how long is it and how much does it cost? Like, what are people going to get out of it?
So this game is like 8 to 10 hours long, and it's only $15. Like,
that's a great deal.
Yeah, it's an insane value, I think. And I totally loved playing it. I think every single thing about it, exploring the world sometimes got a little tricky, just because there's like an overarching world map that lets you quickly teleport from zone to zone. But when you're actually exploring those zones, it's sort of easy to get disoriented and lose track of where you've been and where you haven't. Really, that aside, like, I loved everything about this game.
And there's a lot of things to find too, like confessions that are also in some kind of cryptic poetry.
Yeah, they're like unlockable parts of the story that sort of allude to some things that are happening. That obviously we can't spoil for you, but those are really neat, and there's treasure chests all over the place. And I loved that the main character can fly, which is
yeah, you
really
get that
cool.
really early on, and then you're just all over the place. And control-wise, it works really well too, because you can dash, you can get through obstacles.
And there's some really neat puzzles you have to figure out, and those are really fun. For $15, like I'm struggling to think of a better way to spend that kind of money. This is a really, really fun, enjoyable game. And everything about it is really, really pretty and awesome.
So then, what is the score?
I ended up scoring it a 4.5 out of 5. And if you want to check out the written review, just be sure to check out GamesRadar.com, and we'll see you there.